Howdy, y'all. It's Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. How y'all doing? All right, so we had some previews yesterday for the Necrons Codex. Holy cow. I thought, real quick, let's talk about Orc and the Diviner for a moment. Here is someone's painted version of Orc and the Diviner, the original one. Again, I talked about it in a previous video, but I think this is really an important detail. Just the crown right here is so different compared to what has been, and just the mouth, honestly, it looks like some people have described it as like a howler monkey, but honestly, I think he just looks really interesting in that he's like this almost decrepit old man kind of concept pose, and then he goes to the psycho crazy powerful because of Ready to Strike, right? I wish I could show you my personal one, but you can go find it on my shorts on my channel, Keepers of Nerdom Shorts, and you can find some awesome stuff there of my version of Orc and the Diviner. And then let's go over to the new one. Um, Overall, like this is a neat model. It really is, and they just changed it where he's not just grabbing the staff with both hands. He's holding it now. This Rubik's cube thing going on. The tail still is there. Similar in build and concept for sure, but honestly, the nose thing underneath his eye is a little strange, and then his mouth now just being that sullen, nothing happening. Really, I think this is some of that uniqueness. His cape is really cool, and that's amazing stuff just to see. Um, let's see what else here. Plus his crown again, it just looks like the spitting velociraptor, not velociraptor. There's the little spitting dinosaur from the original Jurassic Park films. Very interesting, very different. Yeah. Um, hmm. I don't know. Just it's an update. It's not a bad update. It looks fine. It's just I don't know. I think it could have been better. But let's go into Codex and Necrons. So you're still using this picture, which is fine. It's a beautiful picture, but kind of just interesting. So we have a new detachment rule that's been previewed, and it is the Hypercrypt Legion hyperphasing. At the end of your opponent's turn, you can select a number of Necron units from your army, excluding units that are within engagement range of one or more enemy units. Maximum number of units you can select depends on the battle size. So Incursion is the smaller, under 2,000, and then Strike Force is your 2,000, and then Onslaught's anything above. But Strike Force, up to 3 units, can teleport, and once you've made your selections, remove those units from the battlefield and place them in strategic reserves. Memory serves strategic reserves is they have to be within 6 inches of the side of the board. Let's go look real quick. Let's confirm. I've been doing quite a bit of reading right here, so just wanting to make sure I understand it all, because it's such an interesting thing to try to, I don't know, wrap your mind around, because Necrons don't do it very often, and the ones that do are pretty simple because they make it pretty easy to understand. So strategic reserves, if you come out of it, you have to come in second battle round. Anything that teleports onto the field has to come in second battle round unless it's already on the field. So that is a little bit different and important to understand. But what's interesting is if your opponent goes first, no, you want them to go second on the first turn, so that way you can teleport in immediately turn 2. Otherwise, you have to wait quite a bit. But that first, so on turn 2, they have to be wholly within 6 inches of any battlefield edge, and then from the third battle round on, they can have to still be within 6 inches of any battlefield edge. But now in the turn 2, they can't be within the enemy appointment zone. And then after that, it's fair game. It's just an interesting thing that strategic reserve still limits you to where these can go. Deep Strike changes that just a bit. We can go up here as well, and some of our models can potentially have Deep Strike, because then it's just 9 inches away horizontally from anything. Yeah, it's interesting. So they have an interesting ability to teleport and do a little bit different of stuff for that first initial teleport. This is just interesting because this really allows for, man, you could have an entire Locust Destroyer crew if we still have those as a miniature, right? Which kind of saddens my soul that it's possible that those go away. I hope not. I've just gotten a lot of them, and I love those things. Just a beautiful model for how old they are, really. And people somehow on the internet say they're not good, and I'm like, I don't get it. So this is interesting. All right, 3 units, man. We're doing Grey Knight stuff here, and so that means they even say once placed in reserves, units like Slippery Ophidians or Ruthless Deathmarks can ignore the battlefield edge to deep strike wherever they please. So that's good. They can just go in and do whatever they want. As far as that, still have to be 9 inches away. But then there's an enhancement for a leader that can do the same, treating strategic reserves like an extramental taxi service for themselves and their bodyguard. Dropping Overlord with 10 Lichguard heavies right next to the opposing Warlord on turn 2. As diabolical as it is, hilarious. And that's interesting because you still have to be 9 inches away typically. But first off, okay, it's funny. These are actually 2 separate things, but they look like they're connected. First off, we have the enhancement up here at the top, and then a stratagem. So the enhancement is for Necrons model only. Models in the Bearers unit have the deep strike ability, so you could turn a Lichguard squad into a deep strike crew. That's really interesting. So anything that could take a leader. I just hope we still have the Locust Lord, man. And then Dimensional Corridor is a separate thing here, and it's a stratagem. It's 2 CP. It's expensive, but in your charge phase, 1 Necron unit from your army that was set up on the battlefield this turn using the Eternity Gate ability of a monolith model that started the turn on the battlefield. Your unit is eligible to charge this phase. Now, we need to go over here and look at this because the monolith is an interesting. Sorry, you're seeing all my fun stuff, but very important detail there. The monolith is really, really interesting stuff because we have the Eternity Gate over here. We'll try to zoom out just a little bit. There we go. And we'll just recenter. There we go. Eternity Gate here says some interesting little info, and it says it's in the reinforcement step, and this thing has deep strike, so you can put it into basic reserves and then bring it out on turn 2. And it's pretty interesting just how strong this thing is. But Eternity Gate, in the reinforcement step of your movement phase, you can select 1 Necron's infantry unit from your army that is either in reserves or on the battlefield. If you select the latter, move that unit from the battlefield and place it into reserves. That unit is then set up anywhere on the battlefield that is wholly within 6 inches of this model and not within engagement range of any enemy models. That unit cannot declare a charge this turn. Now, here's the thing where I'm very, very confused, but very fascinated as to what's the case going on here. It seems like with Deep Strike, you put them back down in the reinforcement step, and then in this case, grabbing something even off the board or from reserves would happen in that reinforcement step as well. So you could time it depending on how you want to. You get to decide, and so that's important. But you can actually have a Necron warrior blob or a Lich Guard, and these are infantry units only for this specific thing. And that's important. So no Locust Destroyers or heavy destroyers, right? That kind of stuff, because they're not infantry at this point, but anything that has the infantry keyword. And they just have to be within 6 inches wholly of the monolith, which could mean that there's a 3-inch charge with that ability coming up, right? That's kind of crazy with the Lich Guard. And Sword and Board is still what I would go with, even though obviously the war scythes are stronger. The Sword and Board would just mean, yeah, you may not get as much damage through, but you're going to make sure to just have the defensive capabilities to stay in with that fight if you don't destroy them. But you also have the firing of, and I could be wrong with all this, that it can't happen that same turn on turn 2, but it looks like it can technically, and that's kind of crazy. 2 CP is really expensive, but to be able to charge in with that and completely lock down what's left of a group or just annihilate it, but if you could really lock it down, it just prevents one other group from messing with your monolith, but also your monolith could target both that group or something else. The one thing about this hyper crypt stuff that's interesting is you don't get the +1 to hit for groups that are led anymore, and that's kind of an interesting thing. One other things that they did And it's interesting right here. This dimensional quarter, it says, and can grant close combat specialists an all important charge right after arriving, potentially within 2 inches of their hapless targets, for the low cost of just 2 CPs. It's got to be 3 inches, doesn't it? Let me know in the comments below. Because wholly within 6, and they have to be 9 inches away, right? There should still be 3 inches. And I know you have to end within 1 inch of them, but you should technically still have to do 3 inches. Could be wrong, right? Maybe it is just the 2. Regardless, that's a guaranteed charge at 2 inches, obviously, and 3 inches is literally anything but 2 1s. Kind of crazy to think about. So, yeah, Scorpic destroyers and stuff. Let's see here. Well, let's go up and see. Are they infantry? No, that's not. And of course, now it's going to be like super slow. So let's find it. Destroyers. Scorpic Lord. He's infantry, so yeah, they would be. That's interesting. Scorpic destroyers are infantry, so you could teleport them now. That's interesting stuff, right? Big group of 6 of those with 4 attacks up next to a monolith. Oh, that would be fun. They'd actually be useful again. It's funny to think that actually the teleport shenanigans make it better for the melee boys than actually these other previews from the Annihilation Legion that they've not really showed a whole lot for. But I think it's an important note here of like what's going on. We'll readjust this just a little bit for us. So Bloodfield Cruelty, these are 2 stratagems for the Annihilation Legion. They didn't even give us the ability, like what actually causes this stuff to work. But Bloodfield Cruelty, 1 CP for both of these. When your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit ends a fallback move, so that's very specific. The target has to be a Destroyer Cult or Flayed Ones unit from your army that started the phase within engagement range of the enemy unit. Roll a d6 on a 2 through 5. They suffer d3 mortal wounds. On a 6, they suffer 3. And then you can make a normal move, but must end that move as close as possible to the enemy unit. I don't get it. But we also don't know what the faction ability will be for this specific version. So maybe this is actually really good and like you can re-attack or something. I don't know. It's just weird. Murderous reanimation. So apparently reanimation protocols are a little different. During your fight phase or the fight phase, target 1 Destroyer Cult or Flayed Ones unit. I love how they're including the Flayed Ones just to make sure that they are usable from your army that has just destroyed an enemy unit or just caused an enemy unit that was not below half strength to become below half strength, and then your reanimation protocols activate. Not great, but interesting, just because the both of these stratagems are really weird because the first one, very specific things have to happen. They have to fall back, and if they know this at all, then they're like, no, I'm good. Unless they really have to be able to like recharge or fight again, that kind of stuff, or be able to fire somehow with some sort of weapons. But this one is just weird because not only you either have to destroy them, or you have to get them at least down to below half strength, and then you get to reanimate. But it's only going to be a D3 of wounds unless you have a reanimator nearby or something, right? It's not good. I don't know why you'd use this. It's really bizarre. I don't know. Just doesn't seem great. But overall, these are fascinating. The Hypercrypt Legion just sounds weird. I just like insanity for the low cost of just 2 CP. No, that's expensive as all get out. Interesting. So if we go back over there, they hit on 3 ups, but and you can't get that down to a 2 up with these guys, but you could actually get them there. That's the interesting thing. And all of a sudden, Scorpic destroyers could be really useful about being able to delete some pretty serious stuff. And you could use up a plasma sight to give them devastating wounds. It's true. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I like the Scorpic destroyers for this, just for the fun of shenanigans right there, right? Lich Guard I think I like better, but if we go back up, the Scorpek Lord. Scorpek Lord, go back. Yeah, I didn't like that. Destroyers. I want to see what the Scorpek Lord gives them. Okay. Alright, let's see here. Scorpek Lord. We'll readjust this here for a second. 4-up invuln save, that's good. 6 wounds. I don't have him yet, but because I never thought he'd be that useful, because he just didn't seem. He's got an Annihilator Rapid Fire 2. 2 shots, so then 4 shots. -1 AP, 1 damage, 2 up ballistics, so nice. Okay, Flincing Claws or Hyperphase Harvester, so 8 attacks or 4, 2 up weapon skill on each, strength 6 and then strength 10. -1 AP and 1 damage for the top one, or Hyperphase Harvester is -3 with 3 damage. United in Destruction. While this model is leading a unit, melee weapons equipped by models in that unit have the lethal hits ability. And the Devastating Wounds goes against that, but yet just having lethal hits on a 6 is good anyway. And then Crimson Harvest. Each time this model ends a charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range of this model and roll a d6. On a 2 through 5, they suffer d3. On a 6, they suffer d3 plus 3. So it's interesting. It's almost like a backward forward thing, but just the fact that you could teleport in turn 2 with a monolith, land it, summon these guys from the backside of the board, spend their 2 CP, and first off, get to fire with everything, including this guy's in Mythic Annihilator. Then do your 2 CP, charge in with a 3-inch charge, and use your Crimson Harvest. They have lethal hits and devastating wounds, so, and he gives himself lethal hits too, so both things here. It's kind of interesting that you would choose between those. Hard decision there too. Just depends on what you're fighting. If you're fighting something bigger vehicle wise, I would definitely go for the Hyperphase Harvester, but at the same time, I could still see going for it if you just, depending on the wounds that are going on. If they have only 1 wound, obviously the Fencing Claw is what you want. If they have 2 wounds, then you got to make a really tough decision. If they have 3 wounds, definitely Hyperphase Harvester, right? Man, lethal hits just means everything is going to be Scorpek. We're going to keep going. Do they have anything? Okay. Each time this model in this unit makes a melee attack, you ignore any or all. Okay, just they ignore modifiers. That's good. They themselves don't have lethal hits, but they could get devastating wounds. I mean, I would still pop it like that first time just to make sure. If the lethal hits doesn't go through, and you just auto hit, auto wound because of the lethal hit, which is fine, this makes sure that also on the other side you have some wounds that are going to go straight through invuln saves, and invuln saves. It's crazy stuff right there. It just means there's going to be a few less devastating wounds potentially because of the lethal hits, but at the same time, those are guaranteed wounds, right? And I'd rather have a guaranteed wound than potential at some 1 or 2 extra devastating wounds. Whew, that's pretty devastating. So we're talking about, if we have 6 of these guys, looking at 24. No, why am I thinking 24? Good grief. No, 24. Yeah, 24 makes sense. Jeez. 24 attacks with just these guys plus the other 4 for the Scorpek Lord for his big thing. 28 attacks, and 24 of those with lethal hits and dev wounds, and 4 of those with lethal hits. Not as survivable as the Lich Guard, but just the fact that you could teleport in turn 2 from across the board, guarantee a charge basically. That's some scary stuff. Necrons are getting into some interesting things. I think the Hypocrite Legion is going to be a lot of fun as long as that works like that to just mess with things. I think the only thing that makes me nervous, he can only go with Scorpec destroyers, so that's important. Another option here that I don't think are as good for this. No, they have 5 attacks versus 4. Wow. They don't have lethal hits or devastating. Well, they could get devastating wounds. 5 attacks, man. You could run a full group of 6 of these. They have deep strike on their own too. That's funny. Lots of teleport shenanigans, guys. Let me know what you think about the Hypercrypt Legion. I think it's going to be amazing. This is something pretty special. Man, we all of a sudden Necrons could be some of the fastest in the entire game. We'll see what the previews fully show maybe on Saturday. I've been Cody from the Keepers of Nerddom. Like, share, and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoy this. Let me know what you think about the Hypercrypt Legion. This is quite the wow. The thing. The Annihilation Legion we can't really talk a whole lot about because it just didn't give us enough. But the Hypercrypt Legion just giving us at least the ability. It's like Grey Knights. They have nothing on us, which is crazy to think. It's like, yeah, where'd they actually learn it from? Necrons, because apparently Necrons. It's so fun as I've started getting into Tau, right? And then Necrons have this coming out, and it's like, oh my gosh, our Terminators from the past are just coming back with a vengeance. And they're like, you took our name of a Terminator. I'll be back and destroy you. I've been Cody from Keepers of Nerddom. Take care, y'all. Hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving. Bye.